Today we are starting a new series called Living in Your Sweet Spot. Let me just say right up front that this series is not about desserts. We're not going to be talking about cupcakes or cookies or gelato. No, we are borrowing this term sweet spot from the world of sports. So I've got here a baseball bat from my son Daniel, his Little League bat. And a baseball bat is designed with a sweet spot, a particular place on the bat where you want to hit the ball. If you hit it up here too high or down here too low, the ball's not going to go very far. You're not going to see much of a result. But if you hit the ball right in the bat's sweet spot, that ball is going to take off. You're going to see serious results. You're going to see what this bat was made to do. And each of us, in one way, is like this bat. Each of us is made to do something. Living in my sweet spot means discovering what that is. Discovering that place where I'm firing on all cylinders. Discovering that place where I'm using the unique talents, gifts, and passions that God has given me. That's what we're going to be exploring over the next 5 weeks. And this morning, I want to begin this series by asking the question, what on earth am I here for? Have you ever asked that question? Have you ever been asked that question? When I lived in San Diego, I volunteered once a month at a downtown homeless shelter called God's Extended Hand. And one day, as I was leaving the shelter, a homeless man walked up to me on the sidewalk. And he said to me, "What am I doing here? Not just here, but here. I've never really had a plan for my life. I'm totally lost." What a gut-wrenching question and comment. What am I doing here? Not just here, but here. It's a question of purpose, which is so crucial, because We've got to have a sense of purpose in life in order to find meaning in life. What am I doing here? I think many of us are taught that our purpose in life is to succeed. That may not be the explicit message, but it's the implicit one. You are here to succeed. That's the point of school, the point of sports, the point of work, the point of all the activities that help us get ahead. Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, didn't go to the college that his father wanted him to, and then he dropped out of college, which further disappointed his dad. His father committed suicide in 1963. In 1982, Ted Turner gave a speech at Georgetown University, and during this speech, he picked up a cover of Success magazine with him, an issue of Success magazine with him on the cover. Now, his dad used to read this magazine to him when he was little, and he kind of looked up in the sky and with a whisper said, "Is this enough for you? Is this enough for you, Dad?" Ted Turner was taught that the purpose of life is to succeed. I'm here to succeed. That's the message he internalized. And that's certainly not a new message. People have been pursuing success for a long, long time. Just look at today's scripture from Mark 10. James and John are two of Jesus' 12 disciples. And they walk up to Jesus and make a gutsy, outlandish request. They say to Jesus, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." Now, right away, you know there's a problem there. If my two sons walk up to me and say, "Dad, we want you to do for us whatever we ask," the chances are good that I'm not going to like what they're asking for. James and John want Jesus to sign off on a blank check to give them whatever they want. Now, Jesus, being more patient than me, hears this request and says to them, "Well, what is it that you want me to do for you?" To which James and John say, "We want to sit at your right hand and your left hand in your glory." In other words, Jesus, we know there are 12 of us, but we want you to guarantee us that we will be the most successful of the 12. We don't want to roll in at number 8 and number 9. We don't want to be middle-of-the-road disciples. We want to be number 1 and number 2, top dogs. Now, when the other 10 hear about James and John's request, they get ticked off. How dare you? Hey, that number 1 spot, that's for me. These are Jesus' 12 disciples, the folks on whom Jesus is staking his work in the world. Yet, here they are acting like little boys playing king of the hill. They're trying to climb over each other to get on top. They are in fierce competition with each other. Although they've been with Jesus for 2 years or so now, their mindset is still, I'm here to succeed. And Jesus says to them, that is how the world around us thinks and operates. In the society around us, there are top dogs, those who are most successful, and the top dogs lord it over others. They kind of just clap their hands and tell people, you go do this, you go do this, you go do this. But then Jesus says, not so with you. If you want to follow me, you need a whole new way of seeing life. As my followers, your purpose in life isn't to succeed. Your purpose in life is to serve. And that's your purpose, Jesus says, because it's mine. I came not to be served, but to serve. To be a disciple of Jesus Christ is to undergo a radical shift in my mindset and values so that when I look at my life, I say, I'm here to serve rather than I'm here to succeed. Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime, which is written for those who are moving into the second half of their lives. Now, as he sees it, most of us spend the first half of our life pursuing success. But in the second half of our lives, we have the opportunity to pursue something better than success, and that is significance. Taking a halftime break is an opportunity to look at what we're doing with our lives and to set a new course. A course in which we pursue true significance rather than mere success. In Mark 10, Jesus is calling his disciples to take a halftime break, to reevaluate their lives. He's calling them to catch a new vision for their lives, a vision in which they stop competing and start serving, a vision in which they pursue significance rather than success. Now, according to Jesus, significance in life comes from serving. And Jesus didn't just teach this, he lived this. For he himself came not to be served, but to serve. Our goal as a church is to help each of you find your ministry sweet spot. That place where you can serve. That place where you can contribute, where you can use all that God has given you to bless our community and world. And that's our goal as a church, because we want each of you to experience the kind of meaningful life that comes from serving. This may surprise us, but true life, the life we've always wanted, is found in serving, not in succeeding. As Albert Schweitzer once wrote, the only really happy people are those who have learned how to serve. Nicholas Kristof is a columnist for the New York Times. And he once wrote an article in which he posed this question: which of these two people would you rather be? Richard is an ambitious 36-year-old white commodity trader who lives in Hawaii. He's healthy, He is handsome. He lives alone in a house with a pool. He has dated a series of gorgeous women. His job is stressful, but he spent Christmas in Tahiti. He's free to indulge in passions like reading, marathon running, and writing poetry. Lorna is a 64-year-old African-American woman who lives in North Dakota. She is overweight, unattractive. She's on regular dialysis, but that does not impede her social life or babysitting with her grandchildren. She's a retired school assistant, very close to her 67-year-old husband, and is highly respected in their church for directing music ministries and leading the semi-annual blood drive. Lorna believes in tithing, and in the last few days has organized a church drive to raise $10,000 for overseas earthquake relief. Now, Richard or Lorna? Which of these two would our society hold up as living the good life, Richard or Lorna? Which of these two is more likely to be happy, Richard or Lorna? According to research, things like gender, looks, or age don't have an impact on happiness. And neither does climate or weather, although as someone who grew up in Seattle, I find that hard to believe. According to Jonathan Haidt, a professor at the University of Virginia, a psychology professor there, happiness isn't tied to these things that we might expect. Instead, it is tied to serving others, being generous with your finances, volunteering with others to make a difference. He notes that one thing that can make a lasting difference to your contentment is to work with others on a cause that is larger than yourself. You see, as it turns out, Lorna is the one who is more likely to be happy. Lorna is the one who's figured out what on earth she's here for. Dr. Stephen Post heads an institute that funds high-level research on human compassion. And they've done studies at over 44 major universities. This is what he writes: "The remarkable bottom line of the science of love is that giving protects overall health twice as much as aspirin protects against heart disease." Post says, "The benefits of compassion to your physical health alone are so strong that if compassion was not free, pharmaceutical companies would herald the discovery of a stupendous new drug called Give Back instead of Prozac, and they would run TV ads about the power of compassion to enhance your life." Based on our best research to date, it appears that we are hardwired to serve. Why? Scripture tells us, according to Scripture, God serves. And we are made in the image of God, which means we are made to serve. Each and every one of us is shaped to serve. And each and every one of us has a unique shape. When I graduated from high school, I had no idea what my unique shape was. I applied to a number of colleges and universities. There was one where I had to declare a major in order to apply. And so I declared my major as civil engineering. So I love civil engineering. I love civil engineers, but I can't picture myself being a civil engineer. What was I thinking? For the first 2 years of college, I didn't know what my major would be. I went to register for the beginning of my junior year, and they said, you have to have a major to register for your third year here. So I declared my major as political science. Meanwhile, I was involved in a campus ministry group where I was learning more about Jesus, studying the Bible, particularly the Gospels, even Mark's Gospel, where today's scripture comes from. And I found myself saying, yes, Jesus, I want to be your follower. I want to be a disciple. And I heard his call, if you want to follow me, serve others. Serve others as I serve them. So I began leading Bible studies, and I found that to be very meaningful. I began opening up my dorm room just to be hospitable and to try to show God's love to the students around me. And then I was given an opportunity to speak one time, and I thought, wow, this is really meaningful. I began doing campus ministry after graduating, and I was asked to be a retreat speaker. I spoke at a retreat on Friday night, twice on Saturday, and once on Sunday morning. And after this retreat, one of the leaders came up to me and said, "How was that?" I said, "I thought that was pretty good." He said, "I think God has really given you a gift in this area of speaking, in the area of teaching." And for me, that was kind of a surprise, because a lot of people who are gifted in speaking or in teaching, they like to talk a lot. They'll just talk all the time. I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk a lot. But I found from experience that when I am speaking, when I am teaching, there is a way that I come alive. I realize this is how God has shaped me. This is my sweet spot. When I'm writing a sermon, even just the act of writing a sermon, I feel alive. It's not easy. It takes discipline. It's hard work. But there will be times when I'm just kind of plugging away at my laptop in my office, or probably at Starbucks, kind of racking my brain trying to figure out the flow of a sermon. And there are times in the middle of that when I will just stop and say, "Man, this is fun. I love this." Now, why do I say that? Because it's how I'm shaped to serve. Preaching and teaching is a ministry sweet spot for me. But I know for a lot of people, the last thing they would want to do is write and preach a sermon every week. There are lots of folks who would rather get a root canal than have to write and preach a sermon every week. Each and every one of us is shaped to serve, but each and every one of us has a unique shape. Your contribution to our church, your contribution to God's kingdom is going to be different than mine. Now, let me just share one simple way where I've seen this to be true recently. As many of you know, I moved offices, moved down from Sato, down by the marsh, up to this building, to the Aloha room, which is right behind us. And when I moved, several people said, "How's your new office?" And I said, "Well, the air conditioning unit stopped working. And there's some broken jalousie windows. And the light, the fluorescent light, doesn't have a cover, and it'd be kind of nice to have that." At the same time, someone in our church, a man named Bob Ress, called the church. And Bob called the church to say, "I want to serve. How can I serve our church? In particular, I have some handyman skills. If there's any projects that need to be done around the campus, let me know. I want to serve." So someone told Bob, I'm not even sure who contacted him, but someone told Bob, we could use some help with the new pastor's office. So Bob and another person installed a new air conditioning unit, and Bob fixed the jalousie windows, and Bob put a cover over the light. A few weeks later, I was talking to Bob. He said, "How's your new office? How's the air conditioning unit going?" I said, "Actually, not that great. It's working, but the room's really not cooling down that much." And I explained to Bob how I tried to put some cardboard to move the flow of the air and change some of the settings, and he kind of said, "No, that's actually not right. You don't want to do that with air conditioning. Let me look into it for you." Several days later, I came into my office, and it was beautifully cool. And I looked, and there was a brand new air conditioning unit in a completely different place. Bob had gone out and purchased that air conditioning unit and installed it. Now, I know something about giving sermons, but I don't know anything about keeping a room cool. And I was so happy that Bob has a different shape to serve than me. And I said, "Bob, how do you know about air conditioning?" He said, "My grandfather owned a metal shop where they worked on air conditioners. And my uncle bought that shop. And when I was in college, my summer job was to work at that shop. And one of the things I did was work on air conditioning units." And I just thought, isn't that great that he and I are different enough that what he can contribute is going to be unique to what our church needs at this time. And I realize that's just one simple example of how Bob used his unique shape to serve our church, and in doing so to strengthen our ministry and mission. Each and every one of us is shaped to serve, and each and every one of us has a unique shape. See, the more we serve out of our unique shape, the more we experience the kind of life that God created us to live. I want to close today's message by sharing one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's a verse that comes from Acts 13, and it simply says this, that David served God's purpose in his own generation. David, that's King David, served God's purpose in his own generation. Don't you want that to be written about you? Don't you want that to be written about us? That years from now, someone will look back on my life and say, Tim served God's purpose in his own generation. That years from now, someone will look back on our church in 2014 and say, KUMC served God's purpose in their own generation. What could be more meaningful? What could be more lasting? That's the legacy I want for us. That we served God's purpose in our generation. Let's not settle for mere success when we can have true significance. As we begin this series, let's commit ourselves to serving God's purpose in our generation, for that's what on earth we are here for.